appearance story. Two disciples are walking together when the risen Jesus appears in their midst to join them. Though Jesus proclaims the scriptures to them, it is only in sharing bread together that the disciples recognize him. Let us rise in body or spirit for the reading of the gospel from Luke chapter 24. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body, there they came back and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour, they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found that the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of God still speaking. Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. We had hoped that he would be the one to redeem Israel. This is what those two disciples, when they are wandering away from the town, say to the stranger on the road. We had hoped. They do not testify to wonder, though it's the day of resurrection. They don't fully understand it. They do not testify to hope. They only testify to despair and to their hopes that have been dashed. As my dear friend points out, it is a vulnerable and tragic response to grief, to loss. And it is an honest answer in our scriptures. We had hoped. Past tense, or maybe past perfect tense, I don't know. But all I know is that it means it's done. It's over. No more. Those hopes have vanished, vanquished in front of them. Makes me wonder about the things we might say the same thing. We had hoped for a different outcome. We had hoped for an all clear. We had hoped for a different test result. We had hoped for more time. We had hoped the world would be different other than what it is. Past Done. Over. No more. Though the story unfolds on the day of Jesus' resurrection, it still seems like an idle tale that hasn't made sense to the extent that resurrection ever makes sense and is not simply gift to us. But at this point, there hasn't been an appearance story for the earliest disciples to see and understand. There has been only trauma, fear, violence, death. And in the midst of it, these two disciples leave their community, leave town along an unknown, long road to a named place that is otherwise hard for us to find. It tells me that they're lost. Amidst all their hopes dashed, they're scattered, they're disoriented, they don't know where to go. Not perhaps unlike sheep astray from the pasture. We had hoped. Now, you and I, we have the benefit of knowing this story from its history of being told and retold again and again. We know that the stranger in their midst is the risen Christ, yet to be recognized. And we don't know why. We have no idea why it was that those disciples, Cleopas and the unnamed other, cannot recognize him. But they don't. They see him simply as a stranger. Even as he goes on to interpret all of the scriptures and to tell the teachings of Jesus, still, he is a stranger to them. That is, until night falls, and they've journeyed a long way together, and they stop at a table where the stranger takes the bread, the one who is meant to be the guest, takes the bread, blesses it, breaks it, shares it. And in that moment, they see, in an instant, their ordinary communion with a stranger on the road has become an experience of holy communion with the living Christ in their midst. They see Jesus alive right at the time that he mysteriously vanishes. Maybe he has to get to Simon. I'm not sure. But in this instant, they're overcome. They're overwhelmed. Were not our hearts burning within us that whole time? I imagine them sort of dazed and giddy, like in surprise reunion videos. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I watch a lot of surprise reunion videos on social media when I need a pick-me-up. And let me tell you, in these days, I often need a pick-me-up. So I will watch these videos, and some of my favorite are ones where someone goes to open their door because they're expecting food, like their pizza's on its way or DoorDash has come, and they go to get their food, and instead it's their long-lost friend standing on the stoop. And for a moment, they are shocked and surprised. And I love watching that moment unfold. There's another category I really like where there's a big gathering happening, maybe family reunion or friends getting together, some kind of reunion. And all of a sudden, the person who wasn't supposed to be there just kind of sneaks into the side and waits until someone does a double take to notice. I like these videos because in this moment, you get to see human reactions to something good, to love in their midst that they weren't expecting. And so there's a moment where there's a double take, a moment of surprise, a moment of shock, a moment of wonder. And I imagine that Cleopas and the unnamed other disciple with him, that they do a double take at this stranger that they've been walking alongside with. I wonder if they turned to each other and were like, were you expecting, did you know he was here? And then they are, in this moment, just overcome with presence. What I love about this story is that Jesus' presence isn't dependent on the disciples' ability to recognize him in the first place. I think that's pretty remarkable that he is not more or less real based on the disciples' ability to understand him, to recognize him right away. He isn't more or less alive because the disciples acknowledged him. There's a bit of an irony at the start of the story when the disciples are saying to this stranger, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's happening?" It's ironic because, of course, perhaps he alone is the one who does know what's happening. But Jesus remains in their presence regardless of what they do not understand, regardless of what they cannot yet see, regardless of what they do not recognize. Jesus remains in their presence regardless of their hope in the past tense, of all that has been dashed and despairing. He walks the way alongside them, listening to their grief and their hurt unfold, a story he knows but still listens to, tends to. He wanders all that long road wherever they are going. Because it turns out that even in resurrection, Jesus, who is the incarnate one, the God with us, remains the God who accompanies us. In the stranger, in the unrecognized ones, ours is a God of kinship. Ours is a God of solidarity through the lost, the wandering, the dashed hope journeys of our lives. And our unrecognizing hearts cannot and do not diminish the presence of Christ in our midst, which I think is really, really good news. Thanks be to God for the gift of communion, which also invites us to see even when we cannot. For the bread that is blessed and broken and shared, that bread by which Cleopas and the unnamed disciple come to recognize him. I give thanks that the same gift is still offered to us for the days when we do not see, for the days we do not recognize, the days we do not understand. As I was thinking about the story of Jesus revealed on this road to Emmaus, I was wondering about what it means for us as Easter people. This is an Easter story. And I was thinking about how what it means to be Easter people is to mean that we are communion people. Like those first disciples in the Acts community, breaking bread with each other, which I think means both what we understand as communion and also the ordinary breaking bread that happens around tables. You see, we are communion people. We commune. We gather. We walk together down unknown roads in solidarity through even the most despairing of days, even when we say, "I had hoped." We accompany each other in fellowship even as we lament all that we want and are still waiting to be different. We gather around tables, ordinary tables, sacred, set-apart tables where bread is broken, blessed, and shared. And in that bread, blessed, broken, and shared, we become like Cleopas and the unnamed disciple, able to recognize the living Christ. Even, dare I say, or perhaps most especially, dare I say, in the unrecognized strangers who come and meet at the table with us. You know, in our United Methodist tradition, we practice communion as one of our two sacraments, that is an ordinary means through which we experience extraordinary grace, our other one being baptism. And when we come to communion, we practice something that is called an open table. Hopefully you have heard this or have heard me in the invitation week after week name this. The open table is the idea that everyone is welcome to come for this meal, like full stop. It's not everyone asterisk, it's everyone period. And that's because what we understand is that, again, at these tables where sometimes maybe Cleopas and the disciple thought they were the hosts, soon they became the guests at the table. It is Christ who is the host at this table. It's not me, it's not the church, it's Christ alone. And so the incarnate and resurrected one who still accompanies the weary, the wandering, the faithful, the determined, the despairing, the hopeless, the hope-filled, that same one is the one who comes, meets us at a table, and welcomes us to receive. For those who have it all figured out and those who have no idea, still it is Christ who welcomes. The strangers, the ones overlooked, there is Christ. And so by grace, we practice receiving communion, but what we are also doing, I think, in receiving communion is remembering that every ordinary encounter is a moment of Holy Communion waiting to be revealed. Because there is no one and nowhere in which the living Christ is not already present. That's why I think that one of the other tenets of our United Methodist practice of communion, there's another tenet around how we practice that, and that is to come to the table as often as you can, which is something that this community has taken seriously in its understanding of itself and its worship, week after week, coming to the table. When I talk about it with our youngest disciples and we're sharing what's left of communion outside with the world, it's because God's love is for all creation, not only the people gathered here. But we're always eating extra mouthfuls of bread, and the rule is you can eat some as long as you share some. So when we do that, we talk about how the reality is that this is a gift of grace and God's love that is so good you can't get too much of it, but you also need to share it. And so that's why we practice that. We come to the table as often as we can to get another mouthful. And I hope we come more like the children, completely unashamed, unembarrassed of asking for more. Because what we are receiving is a gift that helps to transform us, to open our eyes into recognition of all the places where the living Christ is already at work. What we are given is an opportunity for our spirits to see again. And I don't know about you, but dear disciples, do we not need our spiritual sight restored in these disorienting, hazy, sometimes hopeless days? Do we not need our spiritual sight restored so that we might learn to recognize the living Christ in every stranger that we meet, and every neighbor who shares our sidewalks with us? Do we not need our spiritual sight restored so that we might learn to do a double take instead of one of these when we look away from the ones we don't want to see? You know, for all the right teaching, for all the right understanding that Cleopas thought he knew when he said, "Are you the other one who doesn't know? Let me tell you." Let me tell you what's been happening. For all the same kinds of certainty, for all the things that we think we already know and have figured out, it is only in the lived experience, it is only in the walking together, it's only in the kinship of journey, in the meal that is real broken bread, shared at real tables. That is the only thing that can truly restore our sight, to see the living one in our midst. Because the truth that we know as Easter people is that, recognized or not, the living Christ is present in everyone we meet. Our lack of recognition, our denial of it, does not diminish that, cannot diminish God's presence. But we come to the table again and again and again because it is only in bread, real tables, blessed, broken, shared, that we find an answer to all of our dashed, "I had hoped" laments.